Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm back today with our resident engineer, Mike Herzog. How's it going today, Mike?
I'm doing great, David, and I'm really excited because we're about to get technical here. So a little change of
Yeah,
pace. So
yeah.
let's
I,
do
I
it.
I thought it'd be nice just to do something different because a lot of times I come into Wednesdays and a lot of the news I get is really like sometimes it's rehashed and I really don't, other than the whole thing with XAI and SpaceX merging, which neither of those companies is public currently. Now, and a lot of people don't know XAI merged with Twitter a few months back.
Really?
So yeah,
I didn't-
so
Okay.
Twitter or X and XAI are together. So Grok is technically part of
Part of
X.
X.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, SpaceX and XAI are merging pre-IPO for SpaceX. Okay. And the
Okay.
combined valuation of SpaceX because of this is now 1.5 trillion.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big IPO. I don't know if it'll be the biggest IPO ever, but it's going to be damn close. And
Yeah.
it's really
Dang.
interesting because Musk bought Twitter, he and his partners, for I think it was 44 billion. Okay. And right now, it with the XAI piece, it's valued at like 300 or 500 billion. Okay. So people are always like, oh, he's lost all this money and all this. And it's like, it's really hard. I always say this, it's like, you love him or hate him. Don't bet against him. You're stupid to bet against Musk.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's some people out there that you can hate these people all you want, but don't bet against them. You're stupid, and this is kind of like, I think Trump's a jerk. Okay. There's a lot of things about Donald Trump I do not like, but I wouldn't bet against him.
Yeah.
And I mean, the guy makes things happen, and whether you like those things or not, but down the road, I think he's going to look back because we don't really think much about people who were presidents 100 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But some of us will say that Woodrow Wilson might not have been a very good president. Okay. Things like that. But it's only those of us who really study history, right?
Right.
There's been people like that. But generally, in the lens of things, he's going to be um, a president that's not really has a lot to reflect on because there was no major national emergency while COVID really
Yeah.
doesn't count. He didn't have a World War II or a World War One.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have the
It just
South
gets, yep.
secede,
It's
kind of thing.
blended in with everything else. Blended in.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's not really going to be a whole lot different. And we've had a lot of that for the last. Really, I mean, you think about it. No,
Mm-hmm.
FDR is held in high regard simply because he was a president during World War II,
During
right?
World War II. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So I mean, it's different. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and so Mike
Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
around the world and he teaches about EVs and grid planning and helps people prepare for things. And so we've not really gotten into this a whole lot, and I thought it'd be good to have a little bit of a change of pace. We've actually got a big audience tuning in for this today, much larger than normal. So, Mike, I'm going to let you take
Great.
control and go ahead and educate us some.
Are you seeing any slides or anything up on there,
Oh no,
David?
I've got to enable it. Here we go.
Okay, if you do that,
There we
awesome.
go.
Perfect. So I'm gonna jump into this thing. Oh boy, is it changing anything?
Okay,
Okay, there we go. I got it. Perfect.
there you go.
Okay, so a lot of what I do, I think I opened up the wrong thing. Jeez Louise, it's like I've never done this before. Remove from studio. Let me share screen, window. There
It
we
always
go.
has a little delay. I may have to let me see.
Perfect. But like David said, that's how we kind of came to know each other, and through this, through working at a utility, we were kind of on the forefront of this a long time ago. I was very fortunate. The community rep, I had an older gentleman working for me, and 15, 20 years ago, he was all about electric vehicles. We need a plan for this. This is going to be the future of what we're doing. So he got me thinking about these a long time ago. So we've been, from the utility perspective, it's always been on the back burner, always a hot topic of this is going to blow up the grid. This is going to be an issue. But how do we actually approach that? Like, how do we realistically try to put some numbers on this and figure out what's going to happen? So this is part of, I do a full day long one, I do a 2 day long one, but these are just some of the high hitters. A lot of that we go into like the really technical specifics on how this works and how you can plan it on your system. But just at a high level, this is what we're looking at. So a lot of what we do in the utility space, in the planning world, from what's in your backyard to the power plants to the transmission system, bulk electric grid, it's all about curves. It's all about daily use patterns and how things go up and down in the cycles and planning around that. So when we talk about charging patterns with EVs, we have curves of how EVs charge, we have curves of how the grid operate. We want to try to mesh those together as best as we can and not exacerbate existing problems, and utilizing facilities that we have that might have some spare capacity or spare room on them. So really, there we go. When we talk about it, there's a couple of really high-level characteristics, information we want to know about EVs, and this is how we transfer what people do and the vehicles themselves to terms we would use on the grid. So you can look at this picture a couple of different ways. One, there's a horizontal view where the top is characteristics of an electric vehicle in terms that we use for the grid. So it's energy, kWh, it's instantaneous power in kilowatts. And then the bottom is the consumer, the people. Like, this is what I think about it. How far can I go? How quickly can I charge? But these are related vertically as well, where we consider battery capacity from the grid perspective really translates into range and mileage. Like, so it's the size of your gas tank, it's the size of your battery. How big your battery is how far I can go. So we can think about it in terms from a utility perspective, the size of that battery in kilowatt hours, kWh, which is our common unit, translates to how far you can go, which as a consumer, I care about miles. Similarly, it's charging rate, which we care about from a utility perspective in kilowatts. Like, what's that instantaneous push? How many electrons are flowing in that thing once I turn it on? Translates to how quickly your vehicle charges. So if I'm a consumer, I care about how far can I go? How quickly can I recharge? And we're just trying to translate those terms into what it actually means to the grid. So big ranges here. If you have a hybrid vehicle, plug-in hybrid vehicle, your battery is going to be big. I think David coined the term a Hummer's worth of energy, which is
right.
200
yeah. kilowatt hours. Yeah.
200 kilowatt hours. So if you have a big honking Hummer in your driveway, it has a huge tank, which translates to miles. And then the rate of change the rate of that draw is your charging rate.
And you're not trying to insinuate here that everybody gets 2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is kind of what it looks like from your image here, because a vehicle normally only has 10, probably gets 5 miles per kilowatt.
Don't, these
the one
are
with 200 might only get 2.
These are very don't try to compare these numbers. These are just broad ranges you can kind of assume in this. So no, this isn't a draw. I mean, 1.5 would be pretty good efficiency, right? I mean, that wouldn't be bad at all. But it's, don't just sample values if you're going to model these on your system and what it would look like. But we break down that kilowatt a little bit further, and we talk about these a lot into level 1, level 2, and level 3 charging patterns. Each one of them impacts the grid very differently in how we approach for it. So I don't like to recreate these pictures. I'll always cite where I get it, but there's a million of these if you go Google about what these are and what they look like. But effectively, level 1 is 120 volts standard outlet. Level 2 is 240 volts, or like a utility outlet, what your dryer might be on, what bigger equipment would be on. And then level 3 is 480 volts, and now getting larger than that even, 600 volts, 800 volts of what these charging look like. But they all have different profiles. They all have different instantaneous demand and how they come forward. The major concept, and I don't think I have a slide on it here because it doesn't go down that low, but effectively the rules of the road for the electric grid is power equals voltage times current. So P equals VI. the limiting factor we have in most things is its current rating. You can only force so many electrons through the tube before it gets hot or before it gets broken. So just mathematically, if we're limited on our I, P equals VI, if we're limited on our I, we have to manipulate our voltage to get higher power levels. So the whole idea is by going up these different voltage stacks, by going up level 1 voltage, level 2 voltage, level 3, and now even beyond that, we can transfer more power in a shorter period of time while keeping our current constant where everything's going forward. So you can just think of voltage directly relates to our power transfer. So higher voltage, we can move more power in a shorter amount of time, which as a consumer, that's what we want. We want shorter charging times. We want the gas station feel. We want the gas station experience where we can move all this power across, for better or for worse.
It's interesting to look at the difference between, from each section, 5 miles of range versus what you get at level 2 and versus what you get at level 3. It's such a huge difference.
It's such a huge difference. And I have some of that graphed out from a curve perspective, how we model it. But so the big question from the utility and what you hear in the news, or what gets headlines out of it, like, are electric vehicles going to overload the grid? Like, are we going to have a problem? And from a utility standpoint, we're concerned about this. I mean, this is a real issue. So an average US home, so at any given hour throughout the year, draws about 1.2 kilowatts. Now we're very peaky as a system in the US, which means the extreme amount of power draw is very different than the average. So if you're in a heavy AC area, you're in a newer home, larger home, you can draw up to 7 to 15 kW. 5C battery. Oh, I'm just starting to see some comments pop up. Theoretical life, 1 million miles of a vehicle. But it's we see 7 to 15 kW power draw, what you might be rated for. Just even a smaller level 2 charger these days is about 7 kilowatts of power. So you think a 2-car garage, 2 of these vehicles potentially charging at the same time, like on paper, you just doubled the load of that house. And within the utility space, within design space, historically, we don't leave a lot of margin on this. It's not like we had this planned and built in. We're using what we can out of all the equipment and facilities. We do not, in general, have room for a vehicle like that, or if everybody got one unrestricted. From the commercial standpoint, so level 3 DC charging stations, we're concerned as well. I mean, this is a major point of concern, and effectively it's, I always use like a Walmart Supercenter, Super Target as kind of a measuring stick for this. So in general, 150,000 square foot grocery store, refrigerating, cooling, heating, everything associated like that, draws about a megawatt of power. So about 1,000 kilowatts of power, just as a measuring stick. A 4,000 square foot Tesla supercharging station with just 4 chargers can have a max power draw of 1,000 kilowatts. So the same thing. What does that look like in principle on paper? So this is a real installation in Omaha, where we're from and where we have one. This entire building right here is a local grocery store chain, pretty decent sized one, but it draws about 1,000 kW. This is a Tesla supercharging station just in the corner of the parking lot that also draws 1,000 kW of power.
It's hard to fathom that.
It's just the discrepancy. And Tesla's pretty good about power management, and they understand demand and what it looks like. So they're pretty good about self-regulating. So all of these spots can be charging at the same time, and they're able to keep their total demand down to about this level. So it's not like 4 vehicles, this gets really big, but like this grocery store was there for 25 years. This is in a very established part of town where nothing really changes. Homes have been there for a while. It's been built out. It's not the suburbs anymore. It's residential and commercial and all of that. And then you can just start sprinkling in these giant loads in these areas that weren't designed for it and have frankly settled out and not planned for it. But it's wild when you think about that, of like, whoa, that's concerning. So when we look at it from the grid perspective, we're really thinking about, robust power nights, cold weather, be grid independent. Peak demand is what we're looking at. And this is what we drive all of our decisions based off of when we look at this from like a planning standpoint and grid planning standpoint. Basically, it's an hour during the year when the system is at its most strained. We can map it off of that. Typically, it's in the summer. Typically, it's between 4 and 6 p.m. We'll talk about what that looks like. But all of our generation, all of our transmission, all of our distribution systems, everything has to be able to reliably supply power during that 1 hour. And the kicker is the way we plan the grid and everything, it also has to be able to supply power in a contingency conditions as well. So the largest power plant where we're at in the Midwest the system has to be planned in such a way that that thing can fail for whatever reason. There's a leak in the steam pipe. The whole thing shuts down. The grid still has to operate reliably under all conditions with that thing out of service. So there's redundancy, all of that's built in, knock on wood. That's why we have a very robust power system in the United States, because it has contingency built in. But it tends to be driven by forever. It was air conditioning, and all of this was summer based. However, electric heat is starting to creep up, and with the installation of hyperscale data centers that have a very flat annual profile, winter peaks becoming super concerning as well. Especially when we start to rely more on solar energy and renewables in places. Solar, where we're at, our part of the country has 0% accreditation for output in the winter months, which means if you install solar and it's like, I have to be able to account for all of this demand on the system in the worst period, like, all right, for my generation system, if it's winter, you can't count solar at all because it's cloudy. It's miserable when it's the coldest. It could be snowing, all of these conditions. We just can't.
Or when my panels are covered with snow.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not sucking in a whole lot of power when they're covered with snow, that's for sure.
And it's from the grid planning standpoint, like we have to have certainty these things are going to operate when we want them to go forward. But it tends to be driven by AC and electric heat. So this is what it looks like on a typical summer day, residential, and it's associated with temperature and human behavior. I mean, a lot of this is habit based. So our lowest point of power consumption is in the middle of the night. People are home. It's cooler temperatures. We're not running AC as much, and there's just less happening. Businesses aren't operating. We get to the morning. It starts to creep up. People wake up. They turn on the coffee maker. They turn on the lights. They're doing things. They're getting ready to go. It's not a big bump or a plateau, but we see a little bit of a plateau, kind of that mid-morning period where people have gotten to work, homes are starting to shut down, people aren't, the occupancy is more in work and school and not so much residential. But then we keep going up, and that's a function of temperature. That's a function of increased coincidence, which we'll talk more about here in a second, of electric AC or climate control. We peak for 3 to 7 as a broad range, depending on the country you're in. That's when we have high occupancy, we have high coincidence, and it's the hottest time of the day. It's hot. Your ACs are running. Starts to go down as the temperature goes down, and then we see one little spike at the end of the night. That's typically around 9 or 10 o'clock. People get home. People start the dishwasher before they go to bed. People start a load of laundry. You're generally home. You're watching TV. You're on the computer, listening to music. It's dark, your lights are on. That's why we see that little bump when those things happen. The entire grid is planned around coincidence and lack of coincidence in a lot of these things. So when we look at those aggregate curves, it's actually a combination of all kinds of different houses, and this is how their behavior trends over time. They all spike at different periods. So we're counting on different things happening at different times. Same with your plumbing systems, same with our sewer systems, our gas systems, everything like that. If everybody went home today and turned on every light in their house, turned on every TV, did everything like that, there's no way the grid can handle it. We're counting on, I don't turn on my TV at the same time you turn on your TV. And most importantly, our ACs aren't running at the same time. So that's why occupancy in these spaces, and especially heating and cooling, are one of the major drivers of our peak condition. So what does that mean really quickly? So like on a hot day, your AC runs periodically On a really hot day, it runs frequently. So if these are 3 different air conditioners, it's me, my neighbor, and my neighbor's neighbor. If it's pretty hot, mine runs for 45 minutes, it's off for 2 hours, runs for 45 minutes, off for 2 hours. My neighbors are doing the same thing. So if we look at these charts vertically, like, it's just for an example, all 3 of our ACs aren't running at the same time. There's just this natural diversity. Ours cycle on and off different times. Our thermostats run different cycles and what it looks like. But on a really hot day, your ACs run more frequently, and this chance of coincidence is much higher. So as opposed to on for 45, off for 2 hours, now it's on for an hour, off for 15 minutes, on for an hour, off for 15 minutes. So you got to imagine over like a metropolitan area, hundreds of thousands of ACs all doing this, where they're increasing that gap where they're not running, and the chance of coincidence goes much, much lower. So why does it also occur between 4 and 6? And this is building to the punchline for why does this all matter for EVs? It's kind of this magical period where people do stuff between 4 and 6 p.m. So one, you still have people in the office environment. All the lights are still on. It's still climate controlled. Printers are still running. Servers are still humming along, everything like that. And then you have people starting to get home. Like me, like everybody else, when I get home for the day, I do stuff. Like I go in, I turn on the lights. It's the hottest day of the year. I crank the thermostat down. I start making dinner. I start the load of laundry. I do all these. I park the kids in front of the TV and PlayStation. So all of these things are happening at the same time, in the same pattern that we call rush hour, right? Cars are all coming home at the same time. Extend that an extra 5 minutes to when you pull in the driveway and walk into your house and start doing things. So why does that matter for EVs? What do you do when you come home? You plug in your cell phone, you plug in your EV. And that's the biggest concern we have from the electric system right now, is people will plug in their cars right when they get home at the end of the day and strain the grid when it's already at its most strained. Now, what we're finding is, while that does tend to happen, it's maybe not going to be as extreme as we thought it was going to be. Like the chance that everybody comes home and plugs in at the same time and is actively charging at the same time is not going to be a challenge. But even if that's the case, we do have a couple of pieces of good news. So if we're just going to take this vehicle, Kia EV6, we've talked about it on the show. I like it. It's not a bad looking car. We can build some basic statistics out of this and some curves of how it's going to charge that we can then apply to the electric system and the electric grid.
I mean,
So
statistically, shouldn't only 1 out of 4 or 5 people really be charging on a given day anyways?
Yes, and that's exactly what we're finding. It's the infrequency of charging when you actually plug in, and what we'll show in a second, when you actually do charge, it's hardly charging for an extended period, at all. But it's level 1, level 2, level 3. So all the vehicles out there, you can get this information and translate it. But from a charging profile, this is what we would look at. So if we went from 0 to a full tank, 0% to 100%. Now, it doesn't charge linearly. It's slower at those last couple of percentages. A battery, you're supposed to operate between 20% and 80% under daily driving. Yep, I get it. But this is just the math to show, if we had 0% up to 100%, this is what it is. Like, to recharge that 77 kilowatt hour battery at its charging profile in level 1, 64 hours. So if you weren't familiar with EVs, you weren't familiar with how they charge, how much energy, how you actually drive during the day, you would look at this and go like, who would ever buy an EV? It takes, almost 3 days to fully charge this thing back up. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I've heard people use this in anti-EV arguments.
Yeah.
And it's like, but nobody does this, right?
Nobody does this. I mean, this is not what you would do. So immediately we go to like, well, that's what level 2 charging. That's why there's level 2 charging. There's a faster rate. So even at that 0 to 100%, if you have this at your home, if you have access to it, wherever it is, that 64 hours goes down to 7 hours. Now, why it's concerning from us from a grid planning perspective, when we actually start to build those curves, like, yeah, but it's at a much higher demand. So it's a shorter period, but for that 7 hours, it actually is significant load on our system that we have to pay attention to. However, it's what we just said, like, on average, a daily US driver drives about 40 miles per day. So if we were going to extrapolate that and change it a little bit and say, just based on some proportions on the size of the battery, how much energy you're actually consuming from this Kia and what it looks like out of the range versus the battery capacity, you're only draining that thing 12 kWh on an average day and what it looks like. So what does that translate to? Even at level 1 charging, for an average driver in the US, you could plug that thing in when you get home and it would be fully charged. Like you are gaining on it, you're not losing on your charging cycle. What's really, really interesting to us from the utility perspective is that's down to 1 hour at level 2. So the average consumption of a driver is 1 hour per day. So that's where it goes down to. As if you get an EV and you start to do these things, you realize like, I don't need to charge this thing every day, like at all. Like I am not draining this battery. I'm still at these high levels, and it actually recharges really, really quickly when everything is said and done.
Do you think in the future that the grid will be able to communicate with your car, say, hey, could you charge a little slower on this level 2 because we're at high demand?
Yeah, and that's I don't know how far I get into it, but real quick, but that's where we're getting to with everything. Okay. Is we have a lot of flexibility built in from the numbers we've seen already. Clearly, like level 3 charging profile is very, very different, but to get to 0 to 100%, it's 23 minutes, but at a much, much higher rate. And once again, look at the specs on your car. These are not linear, it's complicated, but this is just for an example. What's kind of interesting when we see fleet charging from the grid perspective, not as concerned about it for a couple of reasons. One, the operators of these fleets tend to know what they're doing, and they know how to manage charging. They know how to manage demand. They're doing these things anyway. When we look at Amazon, they're charging level 2 in a hybrid, and they tend to charge overnight. When these things are, when the grid is at its least stressed, when that's happening, you want these vehicles on the road during the day, and during these peak periods, you want them out delivering vehicles. So even at these higher rates, 100 kW for level 3 charging, what these vans are rated for, because they're in a centralized location, because we can relatively plan for it, it's not as concerning as random people just putting in these large level 2 chargers at their house. So this is the problem, really, when it comes down to it, when we're trying to impact the grid. Right now in the US, about 80% of charging is done at home. When you're looking at, from what we've seen, people are plugging in their EVs when you get home, like especially if you're done for the day. Yeah, I'll just plug it in. But from the grid perspective, applying this charging profile over these peak load periods is about as bad as it gets. That's something that we don't want to see on the grid. What does that actually mean from a grid standpoint and planning standpoint? Like, what is the implications? So these big pieces of equipment, if you're going to put in a level 2 charger, it's a standalone transformer, it's a big green box in most places. You're putting in a new one for these or replacing one that's already there.
For level 2 or for level 3?
This is level 3. Okay. I apologize. But these are the standalones. These can be upwards of $100,000 when everything's said and done. If you have to run new wires, if you're going underground, I mean, they're very expensive, and they can take several months or years to install. From the grid standpoint, what we're really, really concerned about, though, are these primary facilities. So the overhead or underground wires that are running along major streets. And then once you get into a substation, which is, the fenced area, gray rocks, high voltage, danger signs, everything like that, where in reality, just the way we've planned and operated our grid for the past 50 years, we don't have this margin to just add these things on here. So depending on where you're at, I mean, one to 4 level 3 charging stations, and you're rebuilding your system. And where we're at on those with the cost of materials, I mean, it's millions and millions of dollars. And probably more impactfully from cost aside, it's years. It's years to plan these projects and procure material and install and commission and do all of those things. So we're really trying from the utility standpoint, like, we don't want to do these things. Where we end up with huge cost items are like residential loops. So is my loop. I'm over here somewhere in one of these houses. If I overload this, like this is the wire that runs through your backyard and connects to all
Okay.
houses. It's buried, it's in there, it's sized for air conditioning, it's sized for whatever your home loads are. If I overload this wire because of my EV, or I got one and my neighbor got one and my neighbor got one, we all liked what we were doing, we have to replace this entire thing. It's not like we just go to our yards and say this is a good deal. Like, okay, you guys, you're the straw that broke the camel's back, fix this. It's not just that. They're not just tearing up our backyard, they're tearing up everyone's backyard through the entire neighborhoods. That's from the utility perspective why we really, really want to avoid those things. We'll skip through all of that, but effectively, this is what we're trying to do. You know, we want to move this charging curve from where it is today to an overnight period, and where we're seeing it, and on those peak condition days. And one of the things we're working to publish a paper on this for the industry's use in it. But one of the preliminary data points we're seeing is when a vehicle is plugged in, it tends to actively charge for about 2 hours, but remain plugged in for 10 hours. So within that space, we can say, hey, you started plugging in at 5 o'clock when we don't want you to. You only need 2 hours to charge. Like, don't start charging until midnight. Like, it's fine. And your neighbor, he or she's not gonna start charging till 2 a.m. Somebody else is gonna charge at 10 p.m. so we can space these out. What we're finding is, just on paper, this is really, really nasty. Like, these are going to overload neighborhoods once everybody starts to get them. But we have a couple things working for us. One, just the natural coincidence or lack of coincidence we're seeing is bigger than we thought, because you don't have to charge every day. And then two, when people do have to charge, there's tons and tons of room to play with it and move things around. And what's even better is, because those charging profiles are so low and people are plugged in when the grid is at its most strained, it really opens up the world for vehicle to grid strategies. And that's one specifically, what we look at in the industry. There's this federal regulation, FERC 2222, that's on the books. It's out there, and this allows for small aggregators to bid into power markets. So in theory, I could go around to all of my neighbors or anybody in our city that has an electric vehicle and say, we're going to group all of our stuff together and we are going to bid it into the power market and try to make profit off of it. So as part of that government function of aggregating all of these small batteries around, like, electric vehicles are specifically called out as wanting to be used as a future resource in these areas.
You know, I don't know if you saw, we had Richard Famdo from Voltaic, who makes electric boats, last week, and their boat has a 300 kilowatt hour battery on it.
Jeez.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the boat generally is just sitting. They're not being used. So even if you came home and had it in your yard and you had it plugged into a bidirectional charger, you could be feeding the grid.
Yep.
We're actually discussing the topic because Richard was in Silicon Valley, in the San Francisco area.
Mm-hmm.
California, if you have enough battery, you can arbitrage and pay for your batteries and make money on batteries in California by buying in the middle of the night, not producing power, and then selling it back. And that's a perspective thing for these boat owners, that their boat is going to be sitting, let's say it's going to be used 5 hours a week realistically, right?
Yeah.
And so 163 hours a week, it could be plugged in somewhere to be providing that. And it was just like, wow, that's a pretty, crazy idea. Because if you had a 300 kilowatt hour battery on a vehicle, you'd have something like a cement truck or a 24-foot box truck, something like that, or even a tractor trailer, like a yard trailer, to have that big of a battery, because that's a Hummer and a half of battery storage, and even the Hummer, for instance, if you had it sitting all the time, it certainly could serve in that.
Yeah, it's crazy how the potential of that, of it. And frankly, from what I see, the reason why nobody's doing it is because nobody's done it yet. And it's one of those, like communications are a major challenge in that last mile, and coordinating and what the grid operators really need to see, like it's that certainty. Like it can't just, hey, me and my neighbors, we're going to bid in the market with our EVs. Like how? Like show me how, when I, as the grid operator, say turn on your EVs for discharge, like it's actually going to work. But the potential for it is crazy, and that's like all of this leading up to it is we thought this is going to be a problem. Yes, this is going to be a problem someday. There's just no way around it. As batteries get bigger, as charging rates get faster, we're going to have to rebuild some things, but it's not going to be as severe as we thought it was. And this idea of people tend to plug in their vehicles when they get home anyway might actually be a great thing for the grid, because we're going to use them for vehicle to grid discharge.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how the EVs are part of their own solution.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, you know, we keep talking about different things with data centers and manufacturing needing power. It's interesting just kind of see how these big batteries are going to play out. But it is funny how people will take that 64-hour thing to charge a dead battery at home from zero, as if it's the norm.
Yeah, no, and it's just,
it's not something that
it's not going to happen. I mean, you're not, never. I mean, from the day you pull it into your driveway, it's you're not.
You never intentionally run a gas car out of gas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, for a gas car, that can be bad too. There's other considerations with that.
Well, yeah, when those lines run dry or lose pressure. But yeah, if you're on the outside and comparing 64 hours to a 4-minute gas station trip, like that's not it. Like that's not the reality of what we're talking about.
No. Well, if you needed to, well, it might be a little longer if you actually had to completely fill up the tank. But but still, it's different. And then we looked at even the idea of like battery swap technology. Battery swap technology is just as fast as charging with gas or filling up with gas, you know, although we don't have that technology in the United States. And probably won't get it.
Not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon. No, I'm just like it keeps saying, I see it in the tractor trailer space as being appropriate, because the tractor trailer space isn't, it's incredibly immature right now, that space. Whereas the cars, you know, the EV charging market is far more mature in the US, even though we're nowhere near like other countries, right? We're way behind other countries, but still it's the concepts of where we're going with it are more mature versus
the neatest thing I've seen in what I study and look at. They did a really good case study in California, where they went down and applied the same methodology, but really studied the state. And they came back with, by 2040, they anticipate 67% of the distribution infrastructure will need to be upgraded in some way, shape, or form. So it's and with the price tag of, God, it's like $7 to $20 billion, just something absurd. But like the back end of it is, under the same analysis they did, they actually anticipate rates to go down for consumers because of the financial positive implications from EV energy sales.
That's only half the electric train that never got built.
Yeah. But it's like, and that's where I go, like, this is like, we are going to have to build the grid. Like, there are going to be, the problem today is data centers. It's not EVs, like when they say the grid is overloaded. But over time, as we hit huge penetration levels, like, we're going to have to rebuild part of the grid. But it's the big picture is actually rates are going to go down potentially because of increased energy sales and high volume market.
All right. Is that the majority of the presentation?
That's all I got for today. But yeah, if anybody, like, the rest of the day would be actually calculating these on the system and going through examples like that.
Oh, damn. And while you've been doing this, and I don't know if you've looked at the stock ticker going by, but today something is going on. They call it the SaaS apocalypse. So what kind of happened is Anthropic, which is Claude, released something called Cowork. advanced AI automation tool for legal and business tasks. The market reaction has been to wipe out $285 billion off of software and tech stocks just today. Huge rollback. I mean, if you look at some of these numbers, like NewScale down 13.66, Nano down almost 12%, Oklo crazy down almost 17% today. Okay, now when we roll around into the AI stocks, it's pretty bad there too. But what's happening is software stocks crash the worst, and it's spreading to all technology. So people are wondering, do we need AI chips or infrastructure all of a sudden? And so people are doing some crazy sell-offs. You know,
So wait,
maybe
so what's the implication with the Anthropic announcement?
so it's going to replace the need for lawyers and legal software and a lot of so like Nvidia here is down 4%.
Yeah, but
AMD is a big one, down 17%. That's huge. AMD's like a rock star in the thing, and somehow Microsoft isn't down. Go figure. But so people have this theory that if software is dying, why buy Nvidia's chips? AMD's in the same space.
gotcha.
Okay,
Gotcha.
it's an AI chip stock crash during today, and if the AI bubble is bursting, now why do we need electricity for data centers? So the nuclear and energy stocks are crashing today too. The Magnificent Seven is down today, except for Tesla. Broader market drags down the S&P 500 today. Tesla's down to 403, though they were up at 470. Let me see. So CEG, which is a Centrus Energy, they're more than like an SMR company. They build bigger nuclear as well. They're down 7.7%. But NVIDIA, AVGO, that's I think they're Motorola, something like that. Microsoft was down, and I guess it's bounced back. But Oklo's down 31.8% in the past 5 days. Okay. If it drops down to like below $60, that's a definite entry point on that. Because you and I both know nothing actually happened to energy today.
No, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, but this is people thinking that because Claude made this announcement of what Claude can do today, that it causes bloodbath. Investors are rotating out of pre-revenue SPACs and AI hype. They're rotating into value stocks, cyclicals, defensive names. Let's see. And so nothing fundamentally changed for like Oklo. Oklo is one I talk about a lot because I've been following it ever since we got into the nuclear space. But it's a macro sell-off. There's no Oklo specific bad news. Pre-revenue stocks always get hit hardest in a risk-off. I was checking to see if it was a good entry point at $74. Now it's a great entry point at $64, but it could drop as low as 55. Yet. Okay. But if you don't own it, get into that 55 to 60 range to enter it. There's a few others that I've got some interesting advice. CEG, if it drops to like 240, anywhere in the 240 to 250 range. And let's see where it is. We may not have Centrus on here. That's CEG. It's currently actually at a good entry point. In NVIDIA, really strange. But anyways, today is not a day to go panic selling. So if you're holding any of those stocks, don't go panic selling because it's just with the nuclear stocks, they're like a damn ping pong ball. I mean, I can't believe how volatile they'll drop. Like Oklo dropping 30% in a week. It went up to 193 not long ago.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, and it rolled back. And anyways, it's very interesting what they're calling today the SaaS apocalypse. So Who knows?
That's crazy how far that rippled.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of insinuating across the space that we don't need NVIDIA now. We don't need AMD to make chips because Claude figured something out with
Yeah, but
co-working.
doesn't Claude run on those chips?
It does.
So
That's why I don't get it.
okay,
Yeah,
that's the piece I was missing. Of like, whoa, wouldn't that be a
yeah. So
boom
here's
for
the thing.
NVIDIA?
The Anthropic AI threat is bullish, is really bullish for NVIDIA and Oklo, and yet they both took a big hit today. Software dying doesn't mean AI dying. It means AI winning. You know, the thing is, I look at I'm shopping for some really high end software in the accounting space right now,
Mhm.
and um, I don't see anybody writing AI to take the place of that stuff.
No,
You know, and it's still technically a SaaS, but you know, it's just different to see some of that
yeah,
going on. Anyways, I think we're good for today.
yeah,
But
yeah.
folks,
That's
I want to
interesting.
thank everybody for watching. Mike, thanks for giving us that presentation today. It was a little bit of different news. I'm going to go ahead and cut the feed. Friday, and Bill and I will be back.